timeline of due dates, post-award obligations and reporting requirements, and resources for eligible sponsors. The fiscal year 2021 Consolidated Appropriations Act allows for distributions of funds to the Louisiana Department of Education to competitively award equipment assistance grants to eligible SFAs participating in the National School Lunch Program. USDA allocated a total of $604,377 to Louisiana to award to schools participating in the National School Lunch Program, with priority given to those demonstrating the greatest need. The purpose of the 2021 Nslp equipment grant is to improve the ability of SFAs to provide high-quality meals with the goals of improving meal nutrition, enhancing food safety measures, promoting increased meal participation, and increasing energy efficiency. While prior equipment grants focused primarily on the National School Lunch Program, the 2021 equipment grant focuses also on the school breakfast program. This funding goal is specific to supporting the establishment, maintenance, or expansion of the school breakfast program. For the purpose of the 2021 grant, equipment is defined in 2 CFR as tangible personal property having a useful life of more than 1 year and a per unit acquisition or purchase cost of $5,000 or more. Although Congress has specified that the threshold for the purchase of equipment cannot be lower than $1,000 for the 2021 Nslp equipment grant, the state agency strongly encourages SFAs to identify equipment that will make the greatest impact on school food service operations based on the goals described in the grant. Typically, such items have a cost greater than $5,000. New equipment and replacement equipment will be eligible for award. Each equipment award is limited to 1 piece of equipment per eligible site application. For example, more than 1 cafeteria table or mobile feeding cart would not be reimbursable for a site award. Keep in mind that the awarded equipment must remain at the site specified on the 2021 Nslp equipment grant application. When scoring grant applications for award, the state agency must give priority to SFAs with sites demonstrating the greatest need. Sites with higher free and reduced percentages will receive the greatest priority in scoring. Responses in accordance with the goals defined in the USDA memo will increase the likelihood of award. Sites which have received Nslp equipment grant award funding in prior years are ineligible and will not be considered for this grant. For school year 21-22, schools approved for participation in the National School Lunch Program that participated in SSO, SFSP as part of COVID-19 flexibilities are eligible to apply for the grant opportunity. Each SFA must confirm and demonstrate the ability to obligate grant funds within 6 months of the notification of the award. Initial award notification will be sent by email to the superintendent and authorized representative, exactly as listed in the CMP website. Please ensure that all contact information, including the email address and phone number for contacts on the CMP website, reflect current and accurate information. Otherwise, you may not receive the award notification and correspondence required to meet the deadlines for payment of award funding. An important consideration when applying for the equipment grant is the financial ability of your system to obligate funds prior to reimbursement by the state agency. An invoice or purchase order must be obtained and provided along with the other submission requirements in the request for reimbursement prior to payment of grant funds. This process typically takes several weeks or more after the date of receipt by the state agency and will vary depending on the accuracy of the documentation submitted. In order to comply with the regulations and requirements outlined in the grant, please be aware that all procurement activities must be performed in accordance with 2 CFR and 7 CFR. Because the grant is primarily focused for equipment that has a value of at least $5,000, the small purchase method of receiving 3 quotes or the formal bid process must be performed and documented. Grant funds must be obligated within 6 months of the award notification, evidenced by an official invoice or purchase order. After this deadline, the state agency will allow a grace period of 30 days to submit the request for reimbursement packet for each site awarded. Incorrect or incomplete submission of the request for reimbursement by the deadline will result in funds being awarded to the next highest scoring site in another SFA. SFAs are subject to NSLP equipment grant audit, and audits will be held during regularly scheduled administrative reviews. These may take place during announced or unannounced visits. Questions that may be asked will include, is the awarded equipment located at the physical site where it was awarded? Is procurement documentation maintained on file, and does it demonstrate a competitive procedure in compliance with USDA regulations? Were NSLP grant award reimbursement funds applied to reimburse the child nutrition program for the correct amount and within the fiscal year funds were provided? Please note that the state agency may impose fiscal action up to the total amount of grant funding provided if an SFA cannot demonstrate proof of compliance with federal equipment grant terms and regulations. The online application process is on the CNP website and will open on October 1st and will close on November 2nd. SFAs will be notified of the award by email by November 30th, 2021. The award notification will include the amount of the grant and detailed instructions on how to request funding. Submission of the online 2021 equipment grant application must be completed by November 2nd, 2021. Instructions on how to apply for the equipment grant follow this slide. The SFA name, site names, and associated data are used for example purposes only and do not reflect actual information. In order to complete and submit online site applications for the equipment grant, start by logging into the CNP website. On the left green sidebar, click on Equipment Grants, which will allow a drop-down of grant applications by year. Next, you will click on the 2021 Application tab. Next, you will be required to verify Sam Gov Registration. Enter your SFA's DUNS number and click Submit. If your SAM verification is successful, a green box will pop up. Under the green box, follow the directions that state, click here to proceed to equipment grants for 2021. This will take you to the site applications for the equipment grant. Only eligible site names should appear in the new application screen. The green bar at the top illustrates that new applications are currently being accepted. You are allowed up to 3 requests for each site that appears. Request 1 should be the equipment of greatest need because request 1 will be prioritized first for award purposes across SFAs and sites. Click Create to open the Request 1 application. You will not be able to submit a Request 2 application until Request 1 is successfully submitted. Note that if you start on an application and save it but have not successfully submitted the application, the corresponding site's Request 1 will indicate open, saved, not submitted, as listed here for Angelica High School. After clicking Create, the online application will pop up. Hover your cursor over the red question mark next to each question for instructions on completing that section. Remember to click the Save button as you work through the application so that you do not lose any work completed. Clicking the Save button will serve to alert you to errors or incomplete information in the application, and it will save the information entered as you go through the application form. So as we take a look at the online application, I'd like to just point out that questions 1, 3, and 5, including the sponsor name, site name, and application request number, will automatically populate into the online application. Questions 6, 7, and 8 will also automatically populate. These numbers include enrollment, the percentage free and reduced eligible students, our site level ISP times 1.6, as well as the school's average daily lunch participation. While those questions autofill, questions 2 and 4 must be answered. These questions are related to whether or not your SFA has received an equipment grant in the past, or if this site received an equipment grant just if that site has received an equipment grant in the past. If your SFA received a grant in the past, but the site has not received an equipment grant in the past, that site is still eligible for award. The question regarding whether your SFA received a grant in the past helps with tie-break scoring. Preference will be given to those SFAs that have not received a grant in the past if more than one SFA site application is scored the same as a result of the applications. Question 9 is the name of the equipment item that you would like to purchase for award. Question 10 is the name of the equipment item that will be replaced, the age of the equipment to be replaced, and the inventory tag number if applicable. Question 11 is the cost of the equipment item to be purchased. Please fill in answers for these 3 questions and remember that if you receive an award for this site for this piece of equipment, you cannot change your mind and request a different piece of equipment in place of what you initially planned and entered into this application. This is just a reminder to think ahead and talk to site managers before determining the optimal piece of equipment by site that you would like to apply for. Question 12 asks what dollar amount is requested from this federal equipment assistance grant to purchase the equipment item. Question 13 asks what the current fund balance is in the school food service account. Question 14 requests the percentage of matching funds that are going to be expended by the school or school system for the equipment requested for award. For example, if general funds will support 50% of the cost of equipment requested, and CMP funds will cover the other half, you will click on 40 to 59%. Question 15 allows you to choose the focus area for the purchase of equipment. You may choose one focus area, several, or choose all of them. Note that this question focuses not only on improving meal participation in the National School Lunch Program, but also supporting the establishment, maintenance, or expansion of the school breakfast program. Question 16 requests a description of the intended use of the equipment to be purchased, including how each focus area will be supported by the purchase of the equipment requested. Question 17 asks how quickly the school system expects to be able to expend the funds, which should be 6 months or less for the purposes of this grant. When deciding on the equipment to purchase, please consider your timeline if purchasing this equipment requires school board approval, or if it is part of a larger project that will take considerable time, or if the amount of time is actually unknown. The goal is to complete procurement procedures and to be able to provide a purchase order or invoice for equipment to the state agency within 6 months or less. So remember to consider the scope of the project when determining what equipment to purchase to fulfill the focus of the grant. Under the application is a certification statement. Please read the certification carefully and ensure that all application questions reflect accurate information prior to clicking the Submit button on the bottom. After submission, the application is closed and no edits may be performed on that application. When submitting the online application, please note that each site application must be submitted individually. Also, an application will not successfully submit if there are identified errors. The next slide explains how to get help correcting application errors prior to submission. To check on the status of an application that is requested, click Back to List at the top of the online application form. A status of Open, Saved Not Submitted will appear under the request number 1 column if the corresponding site application information entered was saved, but the online application has not been successfully submitted to the state. In this example, request number 1 shows a message of Open, Submitted. This indicates that the award application period is still open and that the corresponding site application has been successfully submitted. Now that the request number 1 application for that site has been submitted, the request number 2 application is now available to create and submit. Continue the process for request number 3 application. Now, it's not required that you fill out 3 requests for each site. If you decide that you only have one piece of equipment that you would like to request for particular sites or all sites that are eligible, just fill out that request 1 and submit each request 1. After November 2nd, 2021, the online application process is closed and no more applications will be accepted after that date. A red bar at the top of the online application will show that application submission is closed. At the bottom is a reminder, please check your online authorized representative contact information to ensure there's an accurate email address listed. We want to make sure that any kind of information that we're requesting or award notifications, reminders about requests for reimbursement, that you receive those in your correspondence. SFAs who are awarded grant funding will receive an email with instructions on how to request reimbursement. The request for reimbursement requires an online request for funding and a submission of a purchase order or invoice for each awarded site or piece of equipment. For the online request for reimbursement, follow these steps. Step 1 is to access the awarded site application initially submitted. Step 2, under the awarded amount listed at the top of the page, click on the green Request Funding tab. For step 3, the following box will pop up. Input the actual cost of the equipment purchased as it appears on the purchase order or invoice submitted by email to helen.folks@la.gov. Note that the award amount will automatically populate into the appropriate box. So when you enter that actual amount of your award listed here, after that populates, there will be some automatic calculations that will come through. So for step 4, after entering the actual price of the equipment, which in this example is $5,400, you will click the request button and next click the close button. For step 5, after clicking a request, a heading like the one below will appear. The lesser amount will autofill as the eligible amount, whether it be the actual cost of the equipment entered from the invoice or purchase order or the award amount. Pending a review for accuracy, the eligible reimbursement amount, which in this scenario is $5,400, would be paid to the ZZZ sponsor CNP account as reimbursement. Note that in this case, the price of the equipment was less than the maximum award amount of $5,500. Therefore, the actual cost of the equipment at $5,400 will be paid typically by electronic funds transfer or check. Payment is made by appropriation control after state agency and review and approval of the full request for reimbursement package submitted. Payment must be applied to the school food service account and is transmitted by EFT or check. CNP director should notify the business office to expect a check or EFT in the amount of reimbursement listed to post to the school food service account. CNP director should monitor the SFS account for a deposit and ensure that a note is made to designate the funds as 2021 Nslp equipment grant award funding. To expedite the reimbursement process, please email or fax each purchase order or invoice for each piece of equipment awarded by site to helen.folks@la.gov. And that fax number is 225-342-3305. Also complete the online request for funding as soon as funds are obligated. You can call 225-342-9661 or email helen.folks@la.gov for questions if you are uncertain if your documents were received or if reimbursement was approved. Some important notes to remember are: do not begin procurement activities or purchase equipment prior to receiving a notification of award. SFAs must obligate award funds within 6 months of award notification. And a purchase order or invoice is required as proof of obligating funds to apply for reimbursement. Remember that a quote is not going to fulfill the purposes of this grant as proof of obligating funds. That would have to be a purchase order or invoice. The following notes must appear in financial documentation related to expenditures and reimbursement for the 2021 NSLP equipment grants. This includes the CFDA number, which is 10.579, and the Federal Award Identification Number, or FAIN, which is 216LA355N8103. The equipment grant is separate from the Child Nutrition Program in terms of allowable expenditures and other program requirements. Therefore, funds related to the equipment grant are not reported in the annual Child Nutrition Program application under the income and expense form. However, I do recommend that you make a note on the income and expense form regarding purchase of equipment as a result of equipment grant award and the year of the equipment grant award. Maintain all equipment grant documentation on file for 3 years plus the current year. Equipment grant awards are subject to audit, which is discussed in more detail on the next slide. Procurement, expenditure, reimbursement, and related account documentation is subject to financial audit. The administrative review of child nutrition programs includes an audit of documentation related to the grant award and physical confirmation of the location and type of equipment awarded based on the site award list by year. Independent financial audit and/or a child nutrition program administrative review audit for equipment grants may include current year and/or prior year awards. Additional information is located under Memos and Resources on the CNP website under the School Food Service Forms section under the heading 2021 NSLP Equipment Assistance Grants. To access information regarding the 2021 NSLP Equipment Assistance Grants, go to the CNP website listed on this slide. When you go to the CNP website, do not log in. Go to Memos, Resources, and Course Registration. Next, click on School Food Service, and last, click on the 2021 Equipment Assistance Grant title at the top of the page, which will take you to the USDA memo and related regulations. The Institute of Child Nutrition, formerly known as the National Food Service Management Institute, developed a resource on equipment to assist SFAs, which is linked here. And it's called Equipment Purchasing and Facility Design for School Nutrition Programs. This resource includes information on decision-making for the purchase of school food service equipment. And I do recommend that you take a look at that resource because it can help you in terms of guiding your decisions for this grant. I want to thank everybody for their attention today. And if you have any questions, please contact me, Helen Folks, in the Nutrition Support section, which is School Food Service at 225-219-7769, or by email at helen.folks@la.gov. Now, I did notice that there is a question. Let me go back here. Okay, I did want to explain that based on the eligibility requirements detailed in the USDA Child Nutrition Program NSLP equipment grants for 2021, that schools that have a greater free and reduced percentage of students that is the greatest weight for this grant. So basically, the higher the free and reduced percentage, the higher likelihood that your district or site would receive a grant. So this is site specific. So sometimes there are sites within your school system that are, there's some sites that are very high free and reduced and some sites that are lower. And USDA's intention there was to make sure that those systems in greatest need would actually receive grant funds. So I think that addresses the question that I have. If there are any other questions, please put them in the chat box. I don't really see anything more. Okay, so someone was asking about the resource that I referenced from the Institute of Child Nutrition. And this resource is called Equipment Purchasing and Facility Design for School Nutrition Programs. Now, this slide and other slides will be available on the Louisiana Fit Kids website. It is going to be posted. If for some reason that you need the information sooner, I can send you out an email with the slides that are needed. So please contact me if that's the case. So one of the questions was asking, if like how is eligibility determined in terms of sites and SFAs that have received equipment grants in the past. So basically, if you're a school food authority and you've received an equipment grant for School A, but School B did not receive an equipment grant in the past, School B is still eligible to receive an equipment grant. So you will see an application available on your site. It is a site-by-site eligibility and is not determined SFA-wide. So you may have received an equipment grant for one school and not for another site or other sites, and those sites will still be eligible. Okay, so that concludes all of the questions that we currently have. And I want to thank everybody for your time and attention. And I look forward to October 1st to kicking off our open application period. And remember that November 30th is when awards will be sent out. And please feel free to ask me questions in the meantime. And as we get kicked off, if you have any questions about the eligible sites on that are showing up on your screen, please use this contact information on this last slide, which I'll post up here again for any questions, which is helen.folks@la.gov for email and by phone at 225-219-7769. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good afternoon.